Hello and welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show. I'm your host, Mark Philpott, and today on the show I have a couple who are absolutely inspiring. Now, people choose all kinds of different destinations to travel to, and my two guests today are two people that love going to, let's say, very remote places on this planet. They are both inspiring, and they've recently done something absolutely extraordinary that many of us would shy away from. I'm pretty sure of that. So why don't we welcome to the show Mr. Ewan Blyth and Sophie Ballagh. Welcome to the show, guys. So, Ewan, g'day, mate, and Sophie, kia ora. Welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show.
Yeah, kia ora.
Yeah, good day. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having us today. It's great.
How are you guys going today?
Oh, we're great.
You're great.
Nicaragua is great.
You're in Nicaragua. That's going to be my next question. Where the heck in the world are you talking to us from today? And it's Nicaragua.
Yeah, we're sitting atop a cliff here in Nicaragua on the coast, on the Pacific coast, looking out over the ocean, looking down on our surf break. It's a magnificent spot to be.
It's hard to not be happy.
Isn't it amazing that we can do a podcast and you guys are sitting on top of a cliff? I'm on a sailboat in the middle of the ocean, and we're doing a podcast together.
It's great.
Just across the Pacific.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just across the Pacific. Now, have you guys been on a podcast show before?
I have not.
You haven't?
Yes.
Oh, yes, I have.
Yes,
I have.
We've done one before.
Yes.
Okay, so you've done one, so you know what it's all about. But the great news is you haven't done one with me before, so this is going to be completely different.
Great.
And I'm really happy because the fact that you two guys are antipodeans, it means that I don't need to translate a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about, yeah?
Yeah.
All understood.
You'll be able to understand me pretty much now. Now, what I ask my guests to do when I start the show is I ask you to dedicate the show to someone special in your life. Now, because I've got you two on the show together, I'm going to plant a rule here to say that you're not allowed to dedicate it to each other. You've got to dedicate it to somebody else in your world that's important to you so that they can have a memory of you being on this podcast show. So, Sophie, you want to start? Who do you want to dedicate this show to?
Oh, goodness.
Put you on the spot, huh?
Yeah. Someone that comes to mind, there's many people that come to mind that are special to me, but quite randomly, a gentleman called Brian Keating.
Brian Keating.
He's an incredible man.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
good.
An incredible man. I met him probably 8 or 9 years ago working in Antarctica. And he inspires me a lot. Anything to do with the natural world and travelling, and there we go. I dedicate it to Brian.
Brian, you're the man, Brian. This is for you. And Ewan, what about you? Who are you going to dedicate it to?
Well, I'm actually going to dedicate it to a group of people. I've actually just been doing a lot of research and study on climate change and our effects on the planet, and I'm dedicating this to every person out there who's doing something at the moment, because there's a heck of a lot of people out there trying real hard to try and change the ways of the world. So to them I say kudos.
Okay, brilliant. So you're going out to the mass population that's trying to make the world a better place. I guess you're excluding politicians when you say that, so it's mainly the mainstream people, yeah?
Yeah, I haven't seen too many politicians yet trying to actually get something done that's useful.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, exactly.
Well, let's exclude them for the time being.
Okay. Now, in researching you both, as I do with my guests before I get you on the show, I kept coming up with two words that kept coming up every time I did a search on one of you guys, and the two words were adventure and outdoors. It seems to be that's pretty much the staple diet of your life. Is that right?
You got it. Yeah.
Now, we're going to spend a large part of this show talking about one particular sea kayaking adventure that you've both done in Antarctica. But before we get there, I thought I'd start off by having a little bit more fun with you both. Ewan, you were born and raised in Tasmania, mate, so that's given that's the closest you ever come to being a true Kiwi, disguised in an Australian form. What was life like growing up in the Apple Isle for a young boy? What were you into in Tasmania?
Well, funnily enough, Mark, I was into the outdoors and adventure. Uh,
There you go.
yeah, Tassie's such a. I feel so privileged, really, to have grown up in Tasmania in the era I did. It's an amazing place. It still is to this day. Not that I spend much time there these days, but just to have the freedoms that people have in Tasmania, especially young people growing up, and so far away from so many of the issues that so many young people around the world face. I feel so lucky and blessed to have had that opportunity.
What age were you when you first left Tasmania?
I think when I first left and went overseas, I was a young adult, so probably 18 to 20, somewhere in that range. And yeah, I think even to this day, most people that haven't left Tassie, I think that they're missing something a little bit, because it's only when you leave and you get perspective from the rest of the world, I think you really truly appreciate how amazing that little island is down there.
What do you miss the most about it?
I miss really that. For me, it's just that sense of being in the wilderness there, a wilderness that I know kind of. I'm going to say intimately, but it's a bit more than intimately. It's just kind of innately. It just comes very natural, and it's hard to connect at that level with other places unless you spend a lot of time in them.
So it's always home?
I think so. Until somewhere else is, we move around too much to call anywhere else home. So for want of a better place, it's definitely home, and it'll be some time, I imagine, before I can call somewhere else home.
I can only imagine that after Tasmania, the only probably place you could go is New Zealand. Really, it's.
Dead right.
That's now, Sophie, brings.
We have a good friendly rivalry about it.
Yeah, I bet you do. Now, Sophie, on to you. I'm a bit embarrassed as a fellow Kiwi here, but I had no idea where Pleasant Point was in New Zealand. I actually had to Google it to find out where you're from. I want to know, in regards to your adventures of life, did they actually start the day after birth for you? Did you start travelling the South Island after your first birthday or something?
Yeah, almost. Yeah. Not quite, but almost. Yeah, I guess growing up in New Zealand, my family, I grew up on a farm, and my family were into natural places and wilderness and camping and family trips like that. And so, yeah, I was actually, I used to plea with my parents if I could sleep in a tent on the lawn instead of in the bedroom. It's funny, I just have recollections of that. And so, they would occasionally give in and let me set up a tent or camp out on the lawn under the stars some nights.
I was going to say, I'll tell you a funny story. I used to plea with my parents to let me set up a tent on my neighbour's lawn so I could get away from my own family.
Our lawn was pretty big, so there was no problem there. But yeah, I guess my real kind of start to my adventurous life began at school, at high school at Pleasant Point. There was an outdoor education program I could choose. And
how many people went to this school? Like, were there a handful? Or what?
Yeah, a handful, like 100 or so.
100. Okay, that's quite big then. I was thinking it was like a tin pot town with about 5 people in it.
Well, then it closed down.
Right.
So that might explain it. There was a couple of hundred at the high school. I think my graduating my 7th form class, there might have been 16 of us or something. So yeah, something like that. But anyway, I absolutely loved my outdoor education class, and it really kind of, I guess maybe took that love that I had inside me, maybe that I didn't even know that I had for adventure, and really brought it out. And I kind of plead with my teacher that he could fail me, because I wasn't allowed to resit the class unless I failed. But it turns out I was top of the class, so that was really hard for him to try and fail me. But from then on, really, most of my decisions in life have been to do with some kind of adventure, and yeah, one cool thing leads to another cool thing, and I've been traveling around the world for over how long? Like 12 years now, I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I like to get a bit philosophical with my guests because we are a travel show, and I guess travel brings us together in so many different ways, but it's also a very unique and individual experience because it also taps into our own souls in different ways. So rather than leaving this to the end of the show, I'd like to ask you guys now if you could share with
Sure.
us independently what is it about travel that's so special to you as an individual?
Gosh, I love the I love lots about travel. I love the interactions that you have with people, particularly of other cultures. I guess for me, especially coming from New Zealand, we're fairly isolated down there.
Mm,
When I started traveling, for me,
mm,
interactions
mm,
with locals from other cultures was mind blowing. Maybe I was slightly naive as well before I left New Zealand and started traveling, but also the sheer vast and beauty and this amazing array of natural phenomenon of wild places that I get to go to and see is just incredible. It blows my mind, and I feel very blessed and lucky. Yeah, every new corner I take, and every new vista I see, and new
mm.
person I meet, and they have these experiences of interaction, of some kind of trade, I guess, along the way, and it's pretty magic and special.
So how different do you think you are as a result of that versus staying at home in Pleasant Point, having a family, having a mortgage, and never travelling? How different a human being are you as a result of all that travel? Do you think?
Substantially different, yeah, I believe. Yeah, it's hard to know
Mm,
what life would
mm,
be like if you turned a different corner and chose a different path. Who knows? For better or worse, who
mm.
knows? But I have zero regrets with where my travels have taken me, and I'm always excited about the next road, wherever that
Mm,
may
mm.
lead.
Yeah, right. What about you, Ewan?
Yeah, kind of. I am somewhat in agreement there with Sophie. I think it's. I mentioned the word before, perspective. I think traveling really just it gives you perspective on you looking inwards, but on the world looking outwards as well, and just puts the world into a context that very few other experiences I think in life can give you. And for me, the some of the really kind of key parts or key moments in my life have come from experiences that I've had while I've been overseas. And
Mm.
I'm sure if I was still in Tasmania, how some of those key moments etc. would be from Tasmania, but it would shape my life very differently, I'm sure.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, thanks for sharing that because it's really interesting to know the impact that travel's had on people and continues to have. I think it's something that keeps evolving as well as we have different experiences. We learn more about ourselves and the environment we're in. So it's an ongoing journey, isn't it, as far as that goes?
Absolutely.
Now, we're going to be chatting for the most part in this show about this insane idea of kayaking in Antarctica. And the first question I've got to ask is who actually came up with this idea?
um, well, it's something I think Sophie and I are kayak guides working all around the world, but in the polar regions as well. And
Mm,
it's every kayak guide's dream to do their own personal mission in Antarctica. It's kind of like the final frontier. But it was actually our boss at the time who planted the seed in our heads for this particular mission.
So you've had a lot of experience with working down in that part of the world. Can you explain to the listeners today what some of those experiences have been before we get into the actual kayaking adventure?
Yeah, sure. So, unbeknownst to many people, there's actually quite a sizable tourism industry going on in Antarctica, both terrestrially and nautically. Uh, most tourists are heading to Antarctica via ships these days from South America, some from New Zealand and Tasmania. And part of our job really is to guide them and show them this the seventh continent, the most amazing continent in our minds on the planet.
And there's really nothing like it. Not that we've seen the rest of the world. We've seen some pretty incredible parts of the world, but there's really nothing like Antarctica. And so it is, like you said, pretty special moment to help someone to take a group of people into this environment, and they're having, you know, it sounds very cliched, those life-changing moments, and you know that, and it's incredible to share those with people and help facilitate that happening.
When did you both first go down there? When was the first trip?
For us,
I think about 8 years ago now, we both headed to Antarctica for the first time.
And was it a instantaneous magnet kind of pulling you there once you've been there once? Was it you like, well, we've got to get back and explore this place further?
Oh yeah, hook, line, and sinker.
It's an addiction. I don't know anyone who's been to Antarctica, tourist, guest, or a staff member that we work with who's not completely hooked on the place. It's unimaginable.
I had a guest on my show who actually went down there to run the marathon that happens down there every year, and he was talking about, you know, my intention was to talk about the marathon for the podcast show, but we ended up talking probably about 80% of the time about how it changed his life and all the other spiritual experiences that he ended up having as a result of that. Do you find that's happening to you guys as well when you go down there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that's funny you say that, and it is. It's more of a being in Antarctica is more of a feeling than just an experience. It's a how
for many people it's kind of it's a kind of an inwards journey. For many people, as well as, you know, the obvious outwards journey. We have so many guests who kind of try and share that part of that journey with us, and we get it. We've been there and done the same thing. It's quite hard to explain how an environment can have such an impact on someone.
Yeah,
but the place does.
Yeah, I talk about spirituality in a sense of inner awakening, not anything related to a religious belief, but I guess in terms of that connection to oneself and that whole purpose of, wow, this space that I'm currently in gives me an opportunity to look deeper inside. And I know you for one, as somebody that is more and more, I guess, looking into that deeper meaning of life and the things that are going on within the brain. Have you found an evolution in yourself since you've been going down there?
Absolutely. I feel it's given me a place to kind of anchor some of those querying, that questioning in, and it's a place that really lends itself to that inquiry, I think. And well, I'm sure we'll get to it when we talk more about our kayak expedition, but certainly on that particular expedition, that was a fairly significant part in retrospect for both of us.
I find that really interesting because I guess you're referring to being in that, and you guys actually refer it to as being beyond wilderness, and I really love that because it creates this grandeur of being actually beyond something that we would call wild and being in another zone altogether. So I kind of I kind of get it that you're able to go into a deeper state of self-awareness in a place like that versus being downtown Hobart, for instance. I guess it's just a combination of that. So let's get on to the kayak journey, because we've got to the stage where you said that it was your boss's fault that you took on this ridiculous challenge. But what happened after that? What was the next step in the process for you guys after you thought, right, let's do this?
A whole bunch of planning. It took almost 2 years from the moment that this opportunity kind of arose and became a bit of a reality. Then we set to and started planning, getting a permit organised, which was like a 60-odd page document that we submitted to get a permit to do this, and planning all of our gear, our equipment. We had to make a lot of gear and equipment. We just wanted to make sure we were going to be as safe and successful as possible. Really, the vessel that we work on was taking us down there. It was going to drop us off. It was going to carry on running its trip with the passengers. It was going to bring their passengers back to Ushuaia, the southern tip of Argentina. They were going to disembark. New guests were getting on. It was going to come back down, and we'd find the ship and rendezvous, and all would be good. So really the last thing we wanted was to have to make a bit of a mayday call and ask for an extraction early. It would divert the ship or any other ship, and we kind of wanted to be out there for our maximum period of time. So we had to have all bases covered of what could go wrong, how can we minimise it from going wrong. If it does go wrong, what can we do, what can we put in place to get by. And then on top of that, we filmed it, which was a new challenge, an added challenge to us. And so really that took 2 years.
So let's dive a bit deeper into that planning phase, because I'm quite interested, and I'm sure my listeners are interested to know about a 60-page document. Who's that being applied to? Who do you actually ask permission for to go and do something like this?
So we had a number of options to try and get permitting for this actual expedition, and we could have gone through the New Zealand government and Australian government, and they were both happy to assist us, but it worked out easiest for us to kind of piggyback onto the permit that the company we worked for had already to operate in Antarctica, and that was through the Canadian government. So we basically put together a document that, as Sophie said, outlined how we were going to manage ourselves from an environmental responsibility point of view, through to safety management, risk management, all those types of things.
The main thing that they wanted to see was that, especially being the Canadian government, that they weren't going to have to launch some rescue to come and save our frozen little butts from Antarctica. So we had to really prove to them who we are, what we do, how we're doing it.
And that we were not causing any environmental harm as a result of our actions.
A big part of it.
So I'm assuming from all of that, then this is not something that a sea kayaking novice would take on and get approval to be able to do.
Hopefully not, because it's not a place that a sea kayaking novice might want to venture. It certainly, even with our experience at the time, it certainly took, as Sophie mentioned, like just aside from the actual time, we kind of felt on reflection that every waking minute of our life for that sort of 18 months to 2 years was just totally devoted our headspace to thinking about scenarios. What if something went wrong? How are we going to get ourselves out of it? What gear would we need? Blah blah blah. And so, beyond just the time, it was a huge amount of brain power put into it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hindsight's a wonderful thing. In terms of that planning process that you went through, would you go back and do something different if you were to do it again?
I don't think so.
And I'm talking about the planning phase, right? So
yeah,
I think I try and make it more efficient.
Yeah.
Just knowing what we know now, but it was so thorough, and I'm very proud of how thorough it was, and that we didn't really miss too much.
Actually, you know what I would change? I wouldn't be sitting in Thailand with crappy internet trying to do it. Because again, we were nomads, we were traveling, and we were in Thailand, and we're trying to order and find out things online and try and get them shipped to different parts of the world. That was challenging, so I probably would put myself in a situation where I could rely on some internet and receive some packages in the mail.
Fair enough. And I just want to have a shout out right now to my Thai listeners and just assure them that this is not a personal go at you guys. It's your government that's not providing the very good internet service.
Absolutely. We love Thailand and our Thai friends there too.
So you mentioned about the filming part of it. So that added, I'm sure, another logistical challenge. Was it just yourselves that were filming, or did someone else go with you?
Nope, just two people.
Us.
2 people, as the two of us, and so that was not quite a last minute, but fairly late addition to the whole trip was to film it with the idea of making some sort of documentary / film at the end of it.
And just to add complexity to that, we had never filmed anything in our lives. We were still photographers, amateur, but yeah, so that was a huge learning curve, and then two, logistically to try and work out battery power storage, energy storage, trying to minimize it from freezing and energy leakage, and how are we gonna do this for 2 weeks? Yeah. You know, it was wild. So before we departed for our season in Antarctica and for the trip, we were actually based at my parents in New Zealand in the Marlborough Sounds, and Mum would open her fridge or freezer on a regular occurrence and find a video recorder in there or some item that's been glued, and we're testing if the glue is going to hold in sub-zero temperatures. Turns out it doesn't, so we need to go and find a different glue to make something. And so yeah, there was a fair bit of that going on. So definitely the filming added a huge challenge, which was great.
I'd like to say at this point in time that would only happen in New Zealand, like putting a video camera in a freezer. Like.
And I think it was a shoe, actually. Maybe Mum found some form of a kayak shoe in her freezer at some point. Apologies, Mum.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Did you ever think during the planning phase that by adding this extra dimension of filming this and making a documentary that it was going to impact the safety side of things by doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a big part of our decision making to do this filming or not, and thinking, kind of trying to think through that process of how much is this thing going to impact on our risk management. And we decided in the end, let's go ahead with the filming, and we'll do our utmost to make sure that it doesn't impact on our safety. And I think we did a pretty good job with that. I don't think we made any calls that put ourselves at risk anymore because we were filming.
What was the motivation behind doing the filming? Was it an ego trip to say, hey, look, guys, this is what we've done, or was it just an educational thing about that part of the world?
No, not at all. So it never really crossed our minds to start with in our original phase of planning. It was actually while we were on board the ship working, a lovely German couple who were down there filming. They were professional film producers, nature documentary film producers. They heard about our up-and-coming journey, and in her best German accent, she said, you must film it, yeah? And we were like, oh, okay, we never really even thought of it. We, of course, we'd take some photos and maybe a little snippet or two just to show family and friends. But yeah, she, the couple convinced us that this was a good idea, and they put a wonderful offer out there to help produce a film at the end of it. So from there was another amazing opportunity just open up to us, and we grasped it.
And yeah, at the time we didn't really know why we would film it. As you asked, like for any particular purpose, we didn't have a purpose. They just said it was a great opportunity. They would produce it. We thought, at the end of it, that would be a good way to kind of document just for our own purposes.
For our memories, yeah.
For our memories, but it's turned into something a whole lot more than that.
Yes.
Well, I think that's really cool because I had a guest on my show recently who was talking about, she is a cancer survivor, and she was talking about when she decided to let go of all her normal feelings and emotions and be more open to the universe, all these new things and opportunities started to come into her life. And I guess that's what you ran into that German couple, so it was a bit of serendipity, wasn't it, in terms of driving that process as well.
Exactly, and we opened that door. It's been a heck of a journey through that door, but certainly we've learned a huge amount from it. We've gained so much in so many ways. And it's been amazing. It's been quite amazing.
And you asked Mark at the start what our intention was. This wasn't our intention, but the outcome has really been fantastic. That people are so in awe of the film and inspired, and intrigued, and that's really one of the coolest things about it. We've shown the film and been with the film and done a little road tour through Tasmania and New Zealand, and the feedback we get and the response is incredible. We've shown it to a lot of school kids as well. Actually, my sister in Nelson has shown it to all her classes that she teaches, and we do a little Skype interview and talk all things Antarctic. And the response is great. You know, people are really blown away and inspired, and they learn something, and that's the most we could hope for. Yes, it's a great keepsake for us and memory, but yeah, it's kind of gone beyond that now, which is really cool.
I love to hear that, because I have a lot of inspiring people on my show talking about all the kinds of different amazing travel experiences they've done, and a lot of them are very much adventure based as well. And I think it should be mandatory that these takeaways, such as your film, go into schools across the world, because this is the sort of thing that kids should be inspired by. Sophie, I'm going to have the New Zealand Prime Minister on my show shortly.
Woo-hoo.
And I'm gonna talk to her about isolation and how it should go into every school in New Zealand. So if I can't help you out any more than that, that's the best I can do, right? So let's get on to
can't ask more than that.
let's get on to the name though, because I got to tell you, when I first saw it, I just thought, this is marketing genius. This is
marketing genius / cheesy.
No, it's absolutely fantastic. And who came up with it?
You did.
I did, Mark. But just randomly, we were really quite stumped to try and find a title that kind of encapsulated the kind of story we were trying to tell through this film, which we didn't know at the time. It was, you know, sort of kind of through the production of the film we worked out what the story was that we were trying to tell. And and
it fits perfectly.
And it fitted, and then beyond that, the story even changed a little bit in terms of the theme we were trying to tell, and it fits even better. And yeah, we're delighted with the title and what it means.
Yeah, well, you should be really proud with that, because you know you could spend a lot of money with advertising agencies to come up with something like that, and they still wouldn't nail it for you. So let's get on to the trip now. How big? What are the dimensions? And Ewan, I know you're going to answer this. So, what are the dimensions of one of these sea kayaks? Yeah.
So sea kayaks are roughly about 16 to 18 foot. The ones that we took, they were quite single kayaks each, and reasonably voluminous for a sea kayak. The actual boats that we took on this trip.
So 16 feet long and a body width wide, basically. Is that about it?
That's about it.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And how heavy are they? What do they weigh?
Well,
empty, they probably weigh like 20 to 20 kilos or so, roughly.
Yeah.
Loaded, it's quite another story.
Yeah, we actually have no idea. We've been asked many times how much our kayaks weighed, and we actually have no idea because we didn't have a set of scales to put them on. But
yeah, of course,
two people couldn't lift the kayak. I don't know. We're guessing it's probably up around the 80 to 100 kilo mark
each.
The reason I'm kind of angling towards that and getting to know a bit more about it is because I'm trying to, I guess, determine with camera gear, all your other gear, it must have been pretty much loaded up, huh?
They were super loaded.
They were brimming. We had 12 kilograms or 12 litres, that's 12 kilograms of fuel alone, which was mainly all in Sophie's boat. Yeah, so...
Oh, good on you, mate. Chuck it to the lady to look after. Yeah.
I had plenty myself, don't worry.
They were absolutely brimming. Every single little square centimetre of space was really taken up those first few days, and obviously as the trip progresses, you get a little bit more room as food disappears. All our food was dehydrated food, part of the permitting, of course, for being in Antarctica. But we actually ran into a yacht down there on the first day.
As you do.
And
yeah.
As you do.
Yeah.
And he was so surprised to see us. We were surprised to see him.
Yeah.
And they were a French team on board the yacht. And he was baking bread, and you could smell wafting homemade bread coming out of this yacht. And he was so confused at what we were and what we were doing and how we were ever going to survive. And he was like, "You must come on board, I will feed you." And we were like, "Dude, we've only been going 3 hours. Like, we've got 2 weeks to go yet. Like, I think we're okay." And he's like, "Well, can I give you some food to take?" And literally, I popped my spray skirt off my kayak, and every square centimetre in between my legs and in front of my feet is chock-a-block. And there was literally no room for him to even give us anything. So it was pretty funny.
No room for a fresh baguette.
No.
I bet you if you came across him in the last day of the trip, it would have been a different story.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think we would have been on that yacht in a flash eating some bread.
Now, tell me, let's go back to the beginning of the trip. So had you done things like, and of course you had with all your experience, did you do a trial run with the kayaks loaded up somewhere else before you got going to see what they were like and how they handled?
Well,
you think too highly of us, Mark.
That would have been ideal. That was the ideal situation, but that didn't present itself. So,
no, we didn't get our kayaks until a few hours before the ship set sail to go to Antarctica. In fact,
really?
It was kind of less than a few hours, but
it was literally minutes, really, before the gangway was raised and lines were thrown.
So we tested our kayaks for the first time in Antarctica the day before we set out on our expedition.
Oh, wow. That must have been stressful, waiting for the kayaks to arrive before the ship left.
Extremely stressful. And probably more stressful was trying to work out if all our gear was actually going to fit, because we had a set amount of gear that we thought we needed to keep ourselves safe and fed and warm and whatever, and it all had to come somehow or another. And so then to try and fit it in and see if it was actually going to fit, and then to see if the kayaks would actually still float was quite something.
Yeah, I bet. So you left from Argentina. How many days sailing was it to get down to where you were dropped off?
It's 2 days at sea. So from Ushuaia, the southern tip of Argentina, it's typically, depending on your vessel, 2 days at sea, steaming down. We had a day or two down there before we departed from the ship. So to pack our boats, test them, put them on the water, check out our systems, our safety emergency systems, come back on for one more night of luxury on board and a cooked meal, and then off we went the next day.
So was there a chosen place that you'd done some research on where you wanted to be dropped off, or was this all fitting into the trip of the vessel that was going to come back and pick you up and everything? How did that work out?
Yeah, the later of the two, absolutely.
Yeah, it was pretty dynamic.
All very flexible.
Yeah, we had a rough idea of where the ship would be going for that particular voyage, and so we knew kind of the rough area, but the exact drop-off spot we didn't know really until the day of, and the pickup spot we didn't really know until
the day we got picked
up. So
okay,
it was all very fluid.
Yeah, right. So the drop-off spot where you started this incredible kayaking adventure from, are we talking about a nice white sandy beach with palm trees, or what are we talking about?
Close. No. White, not sandy, white with ice. So we get our kayaks craned off the ship on the Zodiac, and we launch into our kayaks from the side of the Zodiac. And
we're in sort of a sheltered waterway and amongst some islands.
And what's the temperature at this stage?
It's probably hovering around about 0 degrees centigrade.
Yeah. Okay. So there are icebergs in the water?
Oh, yeah.
Big
bergs everywhere.
Big bergs, little bergs. There's actually some whales the day we started, pretty close by to the ship. And we set off, and it was the water surface was pretty calm and lovely, and we paddled off around the back of a big iceberg, and the ship disappeared, and
it was amazing.
There we were.
So how was that? How was that when the ship just left and you lost sight of it? What was that emotional feeling like?
It was a staggering moment.
It was so great.
I still find it hard to put that into words. I really do.
Same. I think something I was nervous, but only because of so much anticipation, so much hurry up and wait for 2 years. And all of this build-up and the build-up on the ship, everyone was excited and they knew we were introduced to the 100 guests on board the ship as these two people who they were going to ditch in Antarctica and leave. Like, they were going to leave us behind. And so, yeah, there was all of this excitement and hype, and I was so nervous, but for nothing, really. Well, not for nothing. It was a pretty big deal, right? But the minute we got out there and just got on our own, it was like, like...
I think Antarctica just, at that point, just did its thing of making you feel...
insignificant.
Pretty small and just a part of the landscape, really.
What time of the day was it that they dropped you off the ship?
I think from memory it probably was mid-morning.
Okay, so you still had a good part of the day to go before you camped down for the first night and stuff.
Well, before we lost daylight? No,
no.
Before
you lost
daylight.
Yeah, we had a good bit of time. We managed to get some kilometres under our belt, and we wanted to get to camp, or get to a camp. When I say get to camp, that sounds like there was somewhere designated. We had no idea where we were going to camp. Get to a campsite in relatively good time, so we had plenty of time to put our tent up,
plug
in the electricity and get the
exactly
out.
Get our systems done before we were up very early that morning, so it was a huge day as it was, so we wanted to get some rest.
So where did you stay the first night, and how was that feeling being out there alone? And that, I know that you've done a lot of other stuff where you've been out there alone, but this must have been on a different scale than anything you've done before.
Yeah, it felt pretty surreal, pretty awesome. Our first campsite was on the back of an island called Hovgard Island.
Hovgard.
I remember Hovgard. Yeah, I know it means nothing to you, but I remember it. Like, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Lovely little campsite. Some penguins came to visit us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they came in the tent.
And what was the temperature dipping down to at night time?
It probably dips. The temperatures for the entire trip probably were somewhere in the order of kind of the ambient temperatures, probably somewhere in the order of -5 to +5 Celsius for the entire trip. The temperature in the summertime are reasonably stable on the Antarctic Peninsula.
The thing
at sea level.
The thing that makes it tough is the wind chill.
Right.
When the wind blows, it's coming right off. The largest ice cap in the world, and it's damn freezing. But also makes life quite challenging when the wind blows, especially if you're in a kayak. So that dictates us a lot.
Can I ask what the conversation was like that first night when you were out there? What were you reflecting on together?
Actually, that just sparked a memory. So we were given, the night before we left off the ship, we were given a package from all of our colleagues, all of our friends that we work with on the ship, and they'd all written us little love notes, little messages, and put it in an envelope.
Oh, brilliant.
And
we decided to take it with us rather than reading it on the ship before we left, and so we took it with us, and that was what we did that first night.
That first night we hunkered down in our down clothing, inside down sleeping bags, inside bivvy bags, inside a tent, keeping warm, and read our little notes from all of our friends on board the ship, and that was pretty special, even a little teary.
That's fantastic.
It was.
That's so great. That's much better than watching MasterChef.
There was no MasterChef schedule, no.
Yeah. Talking about MasterChef, what was the first night's dinner? What was the lubrious nutrition you were about to take on board?
I can only but imagine it involved some sort of legume.
Beans and...
Actually, some rice and
our dehydrated food was awesome, actually. It was really tasty. It was mostly all organic dehydrated meals. Mm-hmm. We're vegetarian, so they were veggie, and they were really tasty. They were all really delicious. And we'd always beef it up with a bit of extra rice or couscous or whatever was going.
I don't know, maybe we were just damn hungry.
Or we were just damn hungry, and you always appreciate things a bit more, don't you, when you're out there?
That's limited.
Was there any, or were there any sponsors on board for the documentary process? Did you have kind of any pressure in that way in terms of sponsors and stuff?
Great question, and I was going to talk to it back there when you talked about the filming and how that would dictate our safety. So we, other than the fact that we got a ride from Ushuaia to Antarctica with the company we worked for, that in itself was sponsorship, but in a different sort of light. We chose consciously not to get involved with sponsorship. There was a huge amount of not only 2 years of time and effort planning, but money go into it as well, and we chose to do it on our own for that sake that you mentioned there, Mark. You know, when there's sponsors involved, there's outcomes that and deliverables that need to happen, and that changes the human ability in decision making. And we didn't want any external pressure of tweaking our decision making, so we were pretty happy to go it alone and just have it as this personal experience from the get go, right through until the end, really.
So onto the trip again. So you woke up the second morning and you were off. So how did you plan kind of how far you were going to go each day and where you were going to go?
So
We're
pretty old school when it comes to navigation, etc. We like to have hard copy in front of us. So we had all our charts and compasses and things, and every night we'd pull them out and have a look how far we'd come, and start and look at kind of the feelings or the weather forecasts that we were getting, and kind of come up with a rough plan of somewhere we wanted to get to, what sort of route we could take, and then the next morning we'd go and have a crack at it if the weather was applicable, and you know, a lot of the time the weather changes, and so you have to change your plans. That's part of adventuring. It's part of sea kayaking.
You know, there was no set destination each evening. It's impossible to know the coastline that well. You're in Antarctica. You're so limited as to where you can get out of your kayak, if it's bedrock or if there's no white sandy beach. Sadly, in fact, there's no any beach. It's rocky and slippery and icy. And so that's your first challenge. Then you've got to find somewhere flat to put your tent, and it's got to be up high enough above what we call a tsunami wave. So if a big ice event, a calving from a glacier happens, then a wave can kind of come and wash up, essentially like a tsunami. So you've got to be up high enough out of that, flattish, and then you've got to look above you and make sure there's no hanging glacier, like way up in the mountains above you, that you're in its way as well. So campsites are challenging. And the maps and charts don't show detail enough to put your finger on the map and go, yep, that looks like a great spot. It was really, let's see how we go during the day, how are we going energy-wise. You know, we didn't have those pressures of we must make a certain distance, so we'd just pull in wherever we thought we could, and yep, that's enough for today. Or right, and you know, if you decide to paddle past that campsite, it could be another 5 hours until you find another one. So yeah.
So was it more difficult to actually paddle in that environment than in a warmer climate, or do you find it actually easier in a cooler climate?
I don't think there's necessarily any difference too much.
Not of the paddling itself. The ice is obviously
you need to obviously regulate your temperature. That's you know, with some experience, that's relatively easy to do. You're in dry suit, so your things, the only things that are exposed are your hands and your head, so you regulate through those parts of the body.
More just navigating the ice.
And then after that, it's just dealing with ice and wind, like sea kayakers do all the time, but throw in the added complexity of dealing with ice.
So let's talk about the weather. What was it changeable, and how quickly did it change when it did turn?
Faster than you just said that sentence.
Yeah, definitely changeable. That's Antarctica. That's what it's known for.
Yeah.
And rapid changes can occur. We would look, you know, reasonably experienced in looking for signals and signs, but sometimes you miss them. Sometimes they're not even there, and certainly we got caught out a couple of times where, you know, it's not that we didn't see them. We saw the signals, but there wasn't too much we could do at that point. So
how far off shore or land were you actually paddling? Were you just like a few hundred feet out from the shelf itself, or did you go out a bit further?
Yeah, so typically we were not too far away from land. We didn't need to be out in open ocean. The exposure, because open ocean at that point is the southern ocean. Talking huge seas. So we're typically in fairly sheltered waters along the Antarctic Peninsula. Sheltered in the sense that you don't have oceanic effects, but you have all the wind effects that the Antarctic continent can throw at you.
How quickly did it take you to get into the zone? That space where you just were straight into it. Everything felt good, and if there was any sense of anxiety, it had gone, and you were just really into enjoying the experience. Did that happen pretty much straight away? Or?
Yeah, that happened.
I'd say immediately,
instantly. As soon as as we said, got around the back of that iceberg and lost the ship.
That was amazing.
It was kind of.
It was on.
It was game on in terms of our outdoor sort of mode, but also game on in terms of let's enjoy this. Let's make the most of this amazing opportunity.
So when those winds came up, was there any fear factor associated with that, or did you pretty much say, okay, well, we've experienced this sort of thing before, we know how to deal with it?
Well, I don't know about fear. I definitely battled a few times. It got a little nervous there at times. When the wind keeps progressively building, and you're trying to move forward and you're not doing very well at moving forward, you're kind of going backwards at times, and just not knowing where we can get out. It's not like, oh, wow, the wind's getting up, maybe we should get off the water. Like, I can't, there's a giant glacier here and I've got to keep going. So that was tough, and I got a lovely little bit of boost of energy from a minke whale that came and swam beside me, surfaced just beside me, and then disappeared, and it was nice. He gave me some added extra oomph that I needed. But that was a tough afternoon, that one.
So I imagine that when it does come up like that, and as you've already shared with us, that it's not always possible to get directly into a beach or a landing site just on call there. So did you have to...
No.
Was that some of the nervous factor that you had about where we're going to beach ourselves and when this comes up?
Yeah, I guess knowing that, we've been experiencing and feeling these winds building, and knowing what Antarctica can throw at you, and this was really just the beginning of it. And when Antarctica throws at you her full force of wind, you should not be anywhere near your kayak on the water then. So just not knowing how much further we had to go before we could pull out, and that turning around and running tail with the wind wasn't really a great option either, just because of our scenario where we were and what the lay of the land was around us. So really pushing forward was the option, and it was challenging. We were inching forward slowly, but knowing that it could just keep throwing more wind at us, and yeah, it got exciting.
For all the boaties amongst us, what's the wind speed we're talking about that it got up to? So
we were probably bashing at that stage when it was peaking. It was probably gusting up around, probably sustained 20 to 25 knots, and gusting higher.
So it's not for those boaties who know wind speed, it's not tremendously extreme, but in a fully laden boat,
in a sea kayak,
these wind waves, the minute they hit the bow of your kayak, it stalls all of your forward momentum and forward energy, and then you try and push forward again. So
seriously heavy.
We were getting buried.
So we were just getting plugged into waves.
And of course, it's like the sea spray that comes off. You're paddling into the headwind, and the sea spray is coming off your bow, and it's hitting you in the face and freezing on your face at the same time. So it's.
You didn't wear ski goggles?
Yep.
Yeah, we had
goggles.
We had goggles if we needed them.
So yeah, I'm assuming, well, from what you've just said, it's obvious that 25 knots of wind in a sea kayak is a very different story if you're in a proper boat vessel and all that sort of stuff. Did you have any leaking problems in the kayaks?
No, our kayaks were pretty solid. We did a bit of work on them on the ship crossing the Southern Ocean after we first got hold of them to caulk them up a bit and make sure they were pretty watertight.
I pushed my bulkhead out on
there. Yeah. But no, they were generally pretty good.
Yeah.
Can you give us a sense of what it's like to actually sleep under the stars in Antarctica at night?
Well, at that time of the year, there's not too many stars actually, because it doesn't really get dark. It depends on the time of the year. When we were there, it was kind of entering like a twilight at night time, so not super dark,
Not really dark enough
not
for stars.
super light enough.
So are we talking about December or something? Are we?
No, this is January,
February.
Yeah.
January, okay, January, February, okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a twilight the whole day round. Is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you get.
Well, during the day, it's
bright.
It's bright, sunny. Normal days, or not sunny, as the case may be. But at night, you're not getting totally dark.
You're not getting true darkness.
You don't really need a flashlight or a torch.
No, we didn't even take a torch with us.
Oh, really? No torch? Okay.
I know, isn't that funny on the packing list?
It is, yeah.
Oh, actually, no, we did.
I think we just had one Lucy lamp just to.
Maybe we did take one for emergencies for signalling, but no.
But to sleep out there is we do it with guests sometimes on some of our trips to south, and it's a pretty amazing experience for most people. For a lot of people, never slept under the stars, under the night sky. At home, let alone in the Antarctic.
In the Antarctica, yeah.
It's part of that same experience we talked about before of just being in that immense landscape and just being and feeling it, and when you're, I guess, doing an activity that's so mundane as sleeping, and you're doing that in that extreme place, it's quite special.
So let's talk about that spirituality side of it now, Ewan, because you said before that when you were down there, it moved some things inside you. Can you explain what some of those things were? How were you feeling in terms of the connection to self?
Yeah, it's really hard to try and explain what I think about, or what I was we were often contemplating down there was more just about the human connection with the planet, with place, with our surroundings, and that's what we sort of tried to explore a little bit in trying to put the film together as well, as to how why is it that the humans have this connection to place, to wilderness in particular, and what wilderness does to people, to individuals. It was certainly for us quite just very humbling and special, the times that we had to go and sit still somewhere by ourselves and just absorb what the place was.
Yeah, there was a lot of silent moments. Even we would paddle beside each other for quite some time and not speak, and not because we weren't getting along, because it's just so rare to have those opportunities of quietness.
There's probably not many places on the planet where you can get away from everything, and I mean everything, as much as it possibly can down there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we say quietness, but it's actually surprising to a lot of people. It's actually not that quiet.
There's a lot of other noise, natural noise of ice popping and grumbling and carving and penguins and wildlife or birds. Yeah. But just that quietness of your own personal mind, and the quietness, like you say, to get away from all other things that we know of civilization. That
must be extraordinary on the senses, though, in terms of taking all of that in, probably in a more intense way than you would when you're in a city or anywhere else, and you're living, breathing, smelling, touching, feeling, all those things. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was talking about in terms of the connection. When you go into wilderness like this, and you're there with it, and you depend on it.
And depend on it no one else
for life, for our own lives, and you become part of the landscape. Then you get to connect with it. It definitely heightens the senses. That's just that's our primordial nature. I think is that understanding of the connection with our landscape.
Got anything funny to share with us from the stuff-ups of the filming opportunities along the way? Anybody do something crazy?
Ewan stepped in his own poop.
Shooting some good B-roll without turning the camera on or anything like that?
Yeah.
Well, I think Sophie might have thrown some toys at one point, and
turn the camera off.
Perhaps not politely asked me to close down the camera at one point.
Yeah.
But No, all in good fun.
So is that coming out in the blooper roll?
The blooper roll.
It didn't even make the blooper roll, which was great. I must have paid our editor a substantial amount.
Yeah,
But,
there you go. So what goes on in Antarctica stays in Antarctica.
Exactly.
So what was the number one thing you had in your kayak that you couldn't live without, Sophie? What was your most important item in your kayak?
Oh, rather than in my kayak, it was actually on my paddle. They're called pogies. You can buy them in pogies in a neoprene version. You can buy them. They're like a big mitt that's fastened fixed to your paddle, protects some wind off you. But neoprene, most of the ones you can buy are neoprene, and over time neoprene absorbs water, therefore it makes them heavy, and then overnight they'll freeze. So each morning we would have had to snap them open to get our hands inside them. What we did was we made some out of an old school sleeping mat, closed cell foam, like go way back when you're sleeping on little blue foamy mats. So it's an amazing material, and it became our best friend, and we made all sorts of things out of closed cell foam, and these pogies were a godsend. They were so great. They're lightweight, they're so insulating, they don't absorb water, they block the wind, they keep in some warmth around your hand, and they save my bacon every day. So
have you got your own product coming out this year or what?
Yeah.
There's a big market out there for it.
Oh, big market.
I was thinking all the time you were saying that. Now I wonder if I could use these pogies on my boat somehow. The answer's probably no. Yeah. What about you, Ewan? Did you have a favourite thing on your kayak or in your kayak that you can tell us about?
Yeah, not so much in my kayak. I had a favourite thing in Sophie's kayak, actually. It was actually Sophie's thing.
The fuel, was it? The fuel.
My favourite thing was Sophie's down booties.
Oh, yes.
Because, well, I think I erred in retrospect. I'm not bringing a pair of down booties on the trip, and as a sufferer of very cold extremities, every night I'd end up just basically stealing Sophie's and putting her down booties on to try and get some life back into my ridiculously frigid toes.
True story. I brought this wonderful pair of down booties for Ewan to wear the whole trip.
They're about 6 sizes too small, but you make them work, don't you?
You make do when you're desperate.
It's all about teamwork, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah. So, was there anything you left behind that you wished you'd had on the trip with you?
There was, absolutely, and
you're gonna
you
laugh.
and many of your listeners may laugh at this, but
it's a Mars
the
bar,
one thing that we desperately wish we had taken was
nail clippers.
a pair of nail clippers.
Nail clippers. Okay.
See?
Seriously.
Yeah, your fingernails grow fast, and you don't really realise how fast they grow, and then it hurts.
They get really sore in the cold.
You got this freeze-thaw process going on daily in your hands.
Okay.
Yeah, so your fingers, when they get cold, and then they warm up, and they thaw out, and they actually swell a little bit, and then your fingernails hurt.
Wow.
And, geez, you just want to cut your fingernails, but you didn't bring your...
Yeah, we're like, 2 weeks and I need a pair of pink fingernails.
Yeah.
Turns out we did.
Now, there's a business opportunity. Someone's going to open up a pedicure and manicure shop down in Antarctica.
Good luck to them.
Yeah,
the trip took 2 weeks, is that right?
Correct.
That's correct.
Yeah, we're out there for 14 days.
Okay, so let's fast forward to the day that you got picked up again. How did it go according to plan, or how did that pan out?
It nearly didn't go according to plan. We had an amazing night the night before, and that morning was just some of the most stunning weather we've ever had, and we pushed off to paddle to the agreed rendezvous spot with the ship, and it was just beautiful. Until we, as we spoke about before, we picked up there was some signs of some winds coming our way. We actually heard a rumbling, like a distant rumbling for quite some time.
And we were so confused what this rumbling was. It was way off in the distance, and I thought maybe it was in my mind. I thought, well, day 14, I'm going a bit delusional.
We've heard of this type of thing before. We've never actually kind of experienced it ourselves, though, and it turns out it was some wind quite some way away, blowing thousands and thousands of tons of sea ice and brash ice
Towards us.
across a bay towards us. And it just went on and it got louder, and then we saw the wind lines and realised what was going on, and we, at that point, were in a fairly let's say not an ideal
pretty exposed.
position, pretty exposed position, and we needed to get round a certain point pretty bloody quickly.
Adrenaline kicked in.
Otherwise, we were going to be in some trouble. And so we put the head down and we paddled probably like we've never paddled before.
So did that spook you a bit with that sound and not having heard something of such intensity before?
It did spook us a little bit.
I think it spooked me, when we realised what it was.
We certainly hadn't dropped our guard, but I think we were on that kind of...
It's home day.
It's home day. We're there kind of thing, and it was so gorgeous. But we weren't quite there yet, and...
Well, you couldn't say that it was a truck just going down the highway nearby, could you?
No, but it
exactly,
sounded, the rumble was crazy,
it was
and then we worked out that was this katabatic wind coming down a valley and out the bay towards us, and it was pushing ice.
Did you capture that on your filming, your audio?
No.
So the tough thing about the filming for the two of us on a self-supported trip with no videographers other than ourselves is in kayaks, when it gets real, you need to have your hands on the kayaks, otherwise you're not going to be in your kayak for very long. So unfortunately, a lot of the really nasty weather we weren't able to capture.
Tried a little bit in GoPro, but that didn't. It never brings it up that well.
Yeah, it doesn't really fully capture it. So
and really, when it really gets serious, you got to have your hands on your paddle, otherwise it's over.
But turns out we survived it. We snuck around the corner. We breathed a huge sigh of relief, and then headed for home.
The ship around the corner, or you still had to wait a bit for the ship to come along?
We poked around the corner. We managed to have a break and have some lunch, and then we saw a ship sail into view.
And it was an amazing moment.
That was quite a moment as well.
Yeah, I bet it was.
I didn't know. I jumped up and down and kind of did a little dance type thing. And
In
I
your
didn't
kayak?
think I would. Oh. No, we were on shore.
Oh, you're on shore, okay.
No, I'm super talented. I can jump up and down on a kayak.
I was going to say, yeah. I don't know many that can do a bit of a rap dance on a sea kayak,
Yeah. Not that I wanted it to end, but it was just a pretty cool moment to see the ship. And
be reunited with a bunch of friends and people that really supported us and who are looking forward to seeing us again. So.
I imagine, though, there must have been a sense of sadness in terms of this has come to an end now. Like, if were you looking for the finish line, or was it something that was just, it was a course of action, you knew you were going to be picked up that day? And
yeah, I think if so 14 days was our maximum kind of time frame that we were going to be out there, and if we needed picking up on day 10 or 11, the ship was happy to do that. We would have liaised and worked that out, and we so happened that we could work it to day 14. If that figure had been 20 or 26 or whatever the figure, you have that in your head, you know that day 14 is the end. So day 12 and 13 you're starting to get tired, or because you know that the end is coming. Whereas if it was if we were going to be out there for 25 days, day 14 would have rolled round and it would have just been like any other, and we would have carried on. But I think because we knew that day 14 was the end, and I was I was feeling tired and ready for. Have you seen the film, Mark? Have you watched it?
I've watched the trailer.
Okay, well, I won't.
Don't spoil it for me, because I want to watch the whole thing. Yeah.
I was about to regurgitate the same words that are in the film, and I'll stop right there. How about that?
Yeah, that's good for all the listeners as well, because we're gonna pump it as far as promotion for them. So let's all watch the film, and then we can see what you finally said.
Exactly.
It was a great moment.
Board the ship and then heading back to Argentina again. Was it from there?
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we came back aboard. It was quite amazing. Sophie's sister was on board, and her husband, special. And it was a really special time. It was quite amazing.
Don't know you two from a bar of soap, and I guarantee you that probably within 2 hours of being on that ship, you were already planning the next adventure, were you?
I think we were still in the shower at that point. Yeah.
But it wasn't far away.
No, it wasn't far away. No,
Yeah.
It's never far away from planning.
Okay, brilliant. So Isolation is the name of the documentary film, and you've already won some awards for it in New Zealand, I see, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it was.
Any tips to the audience on where they can find it to have a look at this amazing documentary of you guys going around Antarctica on a sea kayaks?
Sure thing. It's only recently actually been available online on a platform called Real House.
Realhouse.org. You can rent or buy the film on there. But also we've got it entered in a number of film festivals all around the world. We've tried to choose film festivals that kind of fit the
theme a
the
little, the
theme
ethos
of the story. So it's going to pop up in all sorts of film festivals around the world over the next 12 months as well.
Well, what I'll do for all the listeners listening in today, I'll put the links to that in the description of the podcast so they can find out where to go to get it. And from what I've seen in the trailer, it's a pretty exciting thing to have a look at. So I'm going to be laying down on the couch sometime this weekend and watching it myself and see what Sophie's final words were in that amazing adventure.
Cool.
Now listen,
get a blanket and a hot drink and stay warm while watching it.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you guys back on the show again because I've loved chatting to you both, and I'm sure you've got many other amazing travelling stories that you can share with us. So if you would like to come back on the Global Travel Channel podcast show at some stage, you're more than welcome to do so, and let's inspire more and more listeners about getting out there and seeing the world through the eyes of other people. Would you like to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's been awesome, Mark.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
Okay. Tremendous.
We can talk about Nicaragua.
It's been fantastic having you on the show. Thank you very much for giving up your time in Nicaragua today to speak with me, and wish you all the best for your travels. We'll have you back on the show at some stage, and I'll put all the descriptions for everybody to connect with you guys and watch your documentary on this podcast. So thanks again, Sophie and Ewan.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks,
Mark.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a super time being with you.
There we are. That was Ewan and Sophie talking to us from Nicaragua today, but about their amazing adventure in 2 sea kayaks alone going around the Antarctic ice shelf. What a fantastic story, and I don't know about you, but that's inspired me to definitely check out this amazing documentary they've made called Isolation. I'll put all the description and links to that in the description of this particular podcast. Well, another couple of fantastic guests on my show, and if you're looking for other inspiration, there's plenty of podcast episodes on our website at www.globaltravelchannel.com. You'll find all of our previous episodes there. If you want to download them, simply go to Apple iTunes, click on podcast, and you'll find the Global Travel Channel there. We're also on iHeartRadio, we're also on Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and a host of other platforms which are all listed on our website. If you like our content, why not share it with friends and family members? The more people we have traveling around the world, the better place we're going to have. Okay, that's it for me on this particular episode. My name's Mark Philpott. Until we meet again, I wish you all bon voyage.